A dream of peace. Maria Evans stood by her kitchen window, cradling a mug of chamomile tea, and looked out over the small patch of lawn that separated her tidy yellow house from the rest of the sleepy neighborhood. The September sun was just beginning to dip beyond the willow trees, painting the sky in strokes of honey and rose. For as long as she could remember, Maria had valued tranquility above all else. It had been a hard-won treasure, one she had fought for, grieved for, and now she guarded it like a jealous dragon atop a hoard. Since her husband's death, the house had become too large and too quiet, echoing with memories and half-forgotten laughter. It was why Maria had decided, a year ago, to convert the basement into a small, self-contained apartment. Renting it out would mean a little extra income and, she hoped, a faint sense of companionship, someone's footsteps, the distant sound of music, maybe even a glimpse of everyday joys she thought she'd lost. She checked her phone again. The new tenants, Emily and Brad Harper, were due any minute. Their emails had been polite, their references solid. A young couple, recently relocated from Oregon, excited to start a new life in this leafy corner of Pennsylvania. Maria had baked a banana bread as a housewarming gesture and set out a small welcome basket, a bottle of local apple cider, a map of the town, and a handwritten note. As she heard the crunch of tires in the driveway, Maria's heart fluttered. A strange mix of nerves and cautious hope blossomed inside her. She smoothed her skirt, put on a smile, and opened the front door. Brad stepped out of the sedan first, short brown hair, a friendly if slightly guarded grin. Emily followed, arms wrapped around herself despite the mild evening. "Hi, you must be Maria?" Emily's voice was soft, uncertain, with a hint of something Maria couldn't quite read. "That's me," Maria said warmly. "Welcome. I'm so glad you made it safe. The trip wasn't too rough, I hope." Brad shook his head. "Not at all. It's beautiful out here." Maria led them around to the separate entrance, chatting lightly about the neighborhood, the old oaks, the 4th of July block party, Mrs. Keller's lemonade stand across the street. She showed them the apartment, everything freshly painted. Beginning, she'd find her own piece of joy again. The warm beginnings. For a little while, the day settled into a gentle, agreeable rhythm. Maria heard the muffled sounds of Emily and Brad unpacking, laughter drifting up through the floorboards as they argued about where to put the couch or which box held the blender. Sometimes, late in the afternoon, Maria would see Emily walking through the backyard, phone pressed to her ear, a faraway look on her face, or Brad hauling groceries in with quiet determination. It was a delicately hopeful time, the kind of peace that felt as if it could last forever if you didn't look at it too hard. Maria made a conscious effort to welcome them without intruding. She knocked one morning, bringing over a plate of blueberry muffins, and stayed just long enough for pleasantries. Emily, still in pajamas, accepted with a grateful smile. Brad, hair mussed from sleep, offered to help with anything around the house if needed. Shelves, loose doorknobs, yard work. Maria politely declined, hiding the vague discomfort of letting strangers, however nice, touch her late husband's handiwork. Still, she was glad they were here. The house felt less lonely with voices below and footsteps on the stairs. One Saturday, the three of them chatted on the porch, sipping iced tea as the late summer breeze set the hydrangeas swaying. Brad told stories about working as a project manager for a tech startup. Emily shared her passion for baking, and Maria allowed herself to imagine she might one day call them friends. The neighborhood welcomed Emily and Brad as well. Mrs. Keller, perpetually cheerful, dropped by with a casserole and gossip about a possible coyote behind the elementary school. The Harpers' arrival was the kind of small-town excitement that filled Saturday evenings with speculation. "Did you see that nice new couple?" And Maria found herself enjoying the renewed energy. But over time, like faint cracks in an old painting, small oddities crept in. Brad sometimes apologized for the noise in the evenings. Sorry, long-distance calls back home. But the rumble of voices and television often continued well after midnight. Maria occasionally called the window and watched the new lives blooming under her roof. She told herself, once more, that peace was a matter of patience and trust. Promises not kept. October brought rain to Maplewood, soft and persistent, turning the streets into rivers of gold and russet leaves. Maria was kneeling by the radiator, fiddling with a stubborn valve, when her phone chimed with a message from Emily. Hey Maria, so sorry, but Brad's job payment's delayed. Can we get you rent by next Friday? Truly appreciate your patience. Maria stared at the screen, teeth pressing into her lower lip. She took a breath, trying to remember all those articles about healthy boundaries that her daughter, Alexis, sent her. It wasn't unreasonable, she told herself. Life gets muddy, checks get lost in the mail. And they seemed like decent people. She typed a short reply, "That's okay, thanks for letting me know," then tried, unconvincingly, to brush the worry aside. The Friday came and went. So did another. When Maria finally knocked at their door, Emily answered, hair disheveled and eyes flashing with nervous energy. I'm so sorry, Maria. We've had a hell of a week. My grandma's sick, Brad's boss is on his case, and the bank put a hold on the transfer, Emily said, her voice bubbling over with apologies. Brad materialized behind her, rubbing his forehead. We swear we're good for it. Next week tops. Promise, he said, reaching out as if to reassure her. Maria hesitated. Part of her wanted to scold them, to stand on principle the way Tom, her late husband, would have. But the sight of Emily's thin shoulders and Brad's tired face deflated her anger. She found herself nodding, murmuring, I understand. Just, please keep me posted. But understanding, Maria knew, was a dangerous habit. Days slipped by again, the sunlight turning thinner and sadder as November approached. Little things added up. A stack of empty Amazon packages on the porch, the increasing noise at night, Emily's laughter cutting sharp through the floorboards, while Maria lay in bed, wide-eyed, counting worries. One crisp Saturday morning, she bumped into Emily outside, wrestling with silence. The weight of other people's whispers and footsteps felt heavier than any loneliness she'd ever known. The beginning of conflict. Maria was never one for confrontation. She preferred gentle reminders, trusting that people would respond to kindness. But after another week without a word from Emily or Brad, her patience snapped. On a chilly Thursday evening, after spending too long rehearsing what she'd say, Maria took a deep breath and marched downstairs. She knocked. 3 measured raps. The noise of a TV inside dropped, then footsteps shuffled toward the door. It swung half open, revealing Emily in leggings and an oversized flannel, a distracted look on her face. Oh, hi, Maria, Emily said. Her tone was cool, unreadable. Emily, I need to talk to you about the rent, Maria began, as steadily as she could manage. It's almost a month late and… Emily cut her off with a brittle laugh. Yeah, I know. God, you've reminded us enough. We're not trying to stiff you, all right. We just have a lot going on. Maria bristled. I understand things are difficult, but I rely on that income. Could you let me know when you'll be able to pay or… Emily's eyes narrowed. Look, you make it sound like we're criminals. We're doing our best. Her voice rose ever so slightly. It's not like you're going to run out of food if you miss a rent check. Maria felt heat prickle her cheeks. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just asking for some clarity, that's all. For a moment, they stared at each other. Then Emily rolled her eyes and called for Brad, who materialized in the hallway, his face tight with irritation. Problem? he asked, glancing from Emily to Maria. Maria shook her head, suddenly tired. No, I just wanted to be sure we were all on the same page. As she turned to go, she heard Emily mutter, "Some people just like to play the victim." Maria climbed the steps back to her kitchen, her hands trembling. For the first time, resentment curled in her chest. She placed her mug in the sink, then stood at the window, looking out over her dark yard. The sense of It was as if a quiet poison had slipped under her roof, something unseen and hard to scrub out. Maria realized with a cold jolt that generosity could be twisted, that kindness could breed contempt, and worst of all, her own home, her refuge, was starting to feel like a place where she didn't belong. The first showdown. A sense of dread tightened Maria's chest as she paced her living room that Sunday afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, warming the faded rug at her feet, but Maria felt none of its comfort. She'd rehearsed her words in the quiet of her kitchen, polite yet firm, calm yet unyielding. This couldn't go on. Bills were stacking up on her desk, and every knock on the door made her flinch. With trembling hands, Maria wrote a brief note summoning Emily and Brad upstairs for a conversation. She found them in the yard, Emily hunched over her phone, Brad tossing pebbles at a tree. As Maria approached, Brad looked up, his jaw set. "Can we talk inside for a minute?" Maria asked, determined to keep her voice steady. Inside, the mood shifted. The living room, usually her sanctuary, now felt crowded and uneasy with the three of them. Maria gestured to the sofa, determined not to waver. Emily flopped into a chair, arms folded, expression stony. Brad avoided her gaze, standing with arms crossed near the doorway. "I want to be honest," Maria began. "It's been over a month. I need you to pay your rent, now, or by the end of this week at the very latest." Her voice quivered but did not break. For a beat, no one spoke. Then Emily shot to her feet, every bit of her posture radiating offense. "You know, we're not your children. You don't get to boss us around on top of everything else we're dealing with." Maria tried to hold her ground. "I'm not trying to boss you. I am the landlord, yes, but I've also tried to be fair. I need you to respect that this is my home and my only source of income." Brad finally looked up, his eyes cold. "Are you threatening us with eviction now? Is that what this is?" Maria shook her head, desperately searching for a middle ground. "I just need to know the truth." A trickle of fear seeped into her bones. This was not how community was supposed to work. She'd always believed in compromise, but now, compromise felt impossible. As dusk fell and the shadows grew long, Maria realized her battle for her home and for her peace had just begun. The breaking point. A breaking point, the days grew short as November inched toward Thanksgiving, and the cold pressed in hard around Maria's house. The furnace clicked and whirred, struggling to keep the old place warm. Maria bundled herself in sweaters and, as the tension with Brad and Emily simmered into bitterness, she found herself moving quietly, as if trying to avoid waking something volatile inside her own home. Small slights piled up, the mailbox left open, letting rain soak bills. Trash bins dragged to the curb and left haphazardly in the road, heavy boots stomping up the stairs at midnight. One morning, Maria awoke to muddy footprints traipsing across her porch. Next, she saw the lilac bush crushed, a careless tire mark along the edge. Worst of all was the silence. After the showdown in the living room, Emily and Brad barely acknowledged her. Maria's text reminders about rent went unanswered. When she saw Brad in the driveway, he lowered his head and disappeared inside without a word. Emily posted cryptic complaints on social media, twisting facts, rallying imaginary neighbors on her side. Maria barely slept. Anxiety gnawed at her, each insomnia-riddled night feeling longer than the last. She replayed every conversation, searching for a misstep, a line crossed. Was it her fault? Was she too trusting, too lenient? Should she have demanded more up front? Doubt festered alongside resentment, blurring her once certain boundaries of kindness and self-respect. One particularly bleak afternoon, Maria found a final, unspoken straw. She'd left her favorite porch chair, a gift from Tom, by the garden. That day, she found it broken, the bright slats cracked, and the frame split as if deliberately stomped. For a moment, Maria could only stand, staring at the ruined chair, anger and sorrow knotting in her throat. All at once, the house felt foreign, infiltrated by a chill that heat could never chase away. Despair washed over her. The life she tried to build after Tom's advantage. You have the right to protect your peace. It's not wrong to stand your ground. Maria felt something shift inside her, a thread of resolve, a reminder that her kindness didn't mean she had to surrender her sense of safety. As night fell, she typed out a formal notice, heart pounding but steady. For the first time in weeks, she felt not just fear, but a glimmer of hard-won strength. The lines beneath her eyes were deeper, her hands ached more than before, but this fight, at least, would not be waged in silence any longer. She printed the letter, set it by the door, and waited for morning. Serving the notice. The next morning dawned gray and damp, the sky smeared with low clouds that pressed the light flat and colorless over Maplewood. Maria woke early, unable to rest, and watched from her window as the first stray cat prowled through her winter garden. She made herself strong coffee. The printed eviction notice sat on the table, its stark legal language heavy with decision. Shuffling around her kitchen, Maria's movements were deliberate. Every step, making breakfast, feeding the birds, watering the single poinsettia on her windowsill, became a ritual of reassurance. She found herself glancing again and again at the envelope, searching for both regret and resolve, knowing which one she needed more. At 9 on the dot, Maria steeled herself and left her apartment. The old wood of the stairs creaked under her familiar weight, but she barely heard it over the pounding of her heart. She rapped smartly on the lower door, the envelope in her hand. There was a pause, just enough time for Maria to wonder if they would even answer, before Brad yanked the door open. He wore sweatpants and a faded hoodie, dark hair mussed, jaw set in a stubborn line. Emily appeared over his shoulder, arms crossed, gaze icy. Maria took a quick breath. "I'm sorry, but this can't wait any longer." She held out the envelope. "You haven't paid rent in almost 2 months. I have to ask you to leave." Her voice was a mix of apology and iron. Emily snatched the paper from her hand and scanned it, eyes then walked through town to distract herself. Every familiar street corner seemed tinged with anxiety. Would news spread? Would her neighbors judge her? Mrs. Keller, watering her porch plants, glanced up as Maria passed but said nothing. Maria couldn't help but feel the weight of invisible eyes, the heavy shroud of small-town gossip. Yet, that evening, Alexis called. Maria told her what she'd done, voice trembling at first but steadier as she spoke. Alexis listened, then said, "I'm proud of you, Mom. I know how hard this is, but you did the right thing." After they hung up, Maria sat by her window in the deepening dusk, watching as lights flickered on in other homes around the block. She realized the house felt quieter, not with a hush of anxiety, but with a growing space where peace might return. It was still far from over. The eviction process had only just begun, but for the first time in months, Maria felt herself breathe without dread. She touched the faded photograph of Tom tucked in the corner of her desk and whispered, "I'm doing my best." The winter wind rattled the window frame, but in her heart, something steady took root once again. The aftermath. The air in Maplewood grew colder, sharpening into December, while tension clung to Maria's old house like frost on a window pane. After serving the notice, Maria settled into a careful routine, keeping herself as unobtrusive as possible. Each day she checked the mailbox for any lawyer's reply or official letter from the court. Each night, she double-checked the door locks before bed. Brad and Emily became ghosts in her own home, their movements curt and calculated. No more laughter, no more loud music, only an uneasy silence broken by the occasional slammed door or muffled argument. Sometimes Maria would hear their voices drifting through the floorboards, Emily raging about the unfair witch upstairs, Brad growing more sullen and withdrawn. Shadows flickered beneath their door at all hours, and Maria wondered if they were packing, plotting, or simply stewing in resentment. A week after serving the notice, Maria received her first letter from evenings like that felt safe, warm. Other nights, Maria found herself alone in her kitchen, staring at the faded wallpaper, counting worries like pennies in a jar. One evening, as freezing rain rattled the gutters, Maria heard noises downstairs, loud, purposeful, the scrape of something heavy. She stood silent at the top of the stairs, fingers trembling against the banister. Suddenly, Brad's voice rose, sharp and breaking. "We're not going anywhere. She can't force us out. She's just an old bat who doesn't get how hard life is." Emily shot back. "She's ruining everything. She's got everyone believing we're trash." The words stung, even separated by thick plaster and floors. Maria squeezed her eyes shut, heart aching. She wanted to shout back, to plead for understanding, but knew it would only pour gasoline on the fire. Instead, she tiptoed back to her armchair, wrapped herself in Tom's old flannel, and waited for the storm of voices to fade. Another week passed. Maria caught glimpses of boxes piled in their hallway, plastic bags crammed with clothes, a broken lamp propped against the porch. Bit by bit, the house felt less suffocating, as if each item they packed carried away some measure of tension. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Maria heard a knock at her door. She opened it to find Emily, her face pale and drawn. There was no defiance, just fatigue and something approaching regret. "We're leaving by the end of the month," Emily mumbled, eyes fixed on the floor. "You got what you wanted." Maria's throat thickened. "I'm sorry it had to be this way," she said. Emily shrugged, offering no more words. She turned and disappeared down the stairs. Afterward, Maria sat alone, the winter light slanting into her kitchen. The fight was nearly over, but the wounds lingered. Regret for the trust that had crumbled, guilt for the peace she'd reclaimed at such cost. Still, as she sipped her cooling tea, Maria felt the burden begin to lift. She had fought for her home, where all Brad and Emily had left behind. She collected them gently, setting them by the door for donation, a small kindness even now. For the first time in months, Maria could breathe deeply. She walked each room, running her hand along window sills and bookshelves, quietly reacquainting herself with the familiar, the faded rose wallpaper in the living room, Tom's favorite chair, the chipped blue teapot kept for company. There was no more shouting, no slamming doors, only the quiet tick of the old kitchen clock. Still, the peace felt fragile. At night, Maria lay awake listening for sounds that never came, a habit hard to break. Sometimes she caught herself expecting to hear strained voices on the porch or keys in the door, her heart fluttering with old anxiety before she remembered. It was just her now. The relief mingled with loneliness, bittersweet as winter air. Neighbors were slow to approach. Rumors had spread, and the house that used to be filled with laughter was now the quiet house on the corner. Mrs. Keller waved carefully, almost apologetically, as Maria braved the icy sidewalk to collect her mail. The barista at the coffee shop gave her an extra smile. Maria accepted these gestures with quiet gratitude, but gradually the tension ebbed, replaced by something like hope. Alexis visited one cold Sunday, bringing fresh bread and a warm hug. "It's so peaceful here now, Mom," she said, glancing around. Maria smiled, a true, effortless smile, and realized Alexis was right. The house felt different now, lighter, waiting. Maria used her new quiet as a space to heal. She opened windows to let in the cold, clean air. She baked bread and called old friends. She sorted through boxes of Tom's things, not with sorrow, but as if greeting old memories. Sunlight crept earlier into her kitchen each day, and with every passing week, her world felt a little less weighed down by fear. One golden afternoon, Maria found herself standing in the downstairs apartment, measuring the sunlight slanting across the floor. She ran her fingers along the empty windowsill and imagined laughter, music. Maria finally felt ready to turn her memories outward again, to a future she'd once doubted she'd see. The long, grim struggle of eviction was behind her, but the emptiness left a space she could no longer mistake for loss. It was, she realized one gray morning, an invitation. One Saturday, Maria pulled the for rent sign from the back of her closet. The sign was wrinkled at the corners, and dust lay across the top, but its bold lettering remained hopeful. With a deep breath, she planted it in the frozen yard and posted online, composing a listing both honest and warm. Bright, quiet apartment for rent by owner, looking for someone who values respect and kindness. The inquiries came slow at first. Some wanted to talk price only. Others sent curt replies that reminded her uneasily of past disappointments. But Maria was patient. Now, she asked not only about jobs and references, but about hobbies, hopes, and even favorite pets. She watched for kindness in the eyes of strangers who came to tour the place, for laughter that rang gentle in these old halls. She felt braver each day, learning again to trust her own judgment. It was not just about finding a tenant. It was about choosing a new chapter for the home she'd built with Tom. Alexis visited more often, her gentle encouragement wrapping Maria in comfort. Together, they sorted through apartment repairs, painting the living room a cheerful goldenrod that caught every scrap of sun. In late February, a young couple visited on a wind-chapped afternoon. Thomas, a schoolteacher with soft-spoken ways, and Maya, an ER nurse whose smile glowed even under winter's gloom. They paused to admire the old lilac bush, now a tangle of branches, and listened earnestly as Maria described the quirks and charms of the apartment. Maya glanced around, then reached for Maria's hand. "Thank you for trusting us with your story," she said. There was a sincerity there, undeniable, warming. That evening, Maria sat with their completed application, hands trembling just a little. She caught their references, heard nothing but praise. When she phoned Alexis with her decision, she felt certain, as if some ancient knot in her chest had finally loosened. "They're good people," Alexis said. Even the garden seemed to wake, shy crocuses unfurling from the thawing ground. In the long golden evenings, Maria sat on her porch, cradling her tea and watching as life blossomed around her. The house had scars, So did Maria. But now, both were touched by sunlight and laughter. She realized she'd done more than survive her trials. She'd learned to trust herself, to open her doors wider, and to choose hope, even when fear lingered near. That night, Maria wrote, "Tonight I am not alone. The house is full again, not with chaos but connection. The air is new, the possibilities tender and real. For the first time, I feel at home in my own life." As dusk melted to night and gentle voices drifted up through the floorboards, Maria smiled into the soft dark, grateful for every open door. New roots. Spring arrived in Maplewood in a riot of blossoms. The lilac bush near Maria's porch, broken and battered from last year, sprouted tight green buds. Maria took it as a sign. Even those things that seemed ruined could flourish again, given warmth and a little care. Life in the old house found a new rhythm, soothed by days that grew longer and evenings scented with fresh-cut grass. Thomas and Maya fit into Maria's world as if they'd always been meant for it. Their laughter bounced up through the floorboards. At sunrise, she often saw Maya heading off to the hospital, hair pulled back and eyes bright with exhaustion and hope. Thomas would kneel in the side yard on weekends, coaxing parsley and basil out of poor soil, humming old songs as he worked. Sometimes, Maria invited them upstairs for coffee. The kitchen would fill with the smell of cinnamon bread and stories, Maya telling funny tales from the ER, Thomas reminiscing about his school days. Maria, who'd once worried her heart had hardened, found herself laughing easily, even joining in their plans for the little apartment garden. Trust grew. One rainy afternoon, Maya knocked, cradling a bouquet of wildflowers. "We want to try fixing the vegetable beds," she explained, cheeks flushed. "Would you mind if we put in a few new plants?" Maria only smiled. "This garden's always been a little wild," she said. "I'd love to see it thrive." Side by side, they cleared tangled, quiet nights. She still reached for Tom's photograph. She still missed him, missed what they'd built together. But now there was something new, a soft, deep gratitude for where her journey had led. One evening in late April, with the fragrance of lilacs drifting inside, Maria joined Thomas and Maya on the porch. They shared iced tea and watched the first fireflies blink against the dark. There were no heavy words, no anxious glances, only the sweet, ordinary comfort of good company. As the moon rose, Maria realized the old house finally felt whole again. Not because it was noisy and full, but because it rang with the right kind of quiet, peaceful, open, shared. Later, in her journal, Maria wrote, "Roots grow in silence beneath the surface. This house has found its roots again, and so have I. Tomorrow will bring what it brings, but tonight I belong." And in the cool hush of spring, Maria closed her eyes, at peace with all she had lost and all she had found. Summer light. By June, Maplewood was awash in color. Every corner of Maria's yard burst with wildflowers, and the rows of vegetables behind the house, overseen by Thomas and Maya, had become a lush tangle of green. Summer's golden light spilled through Maria's clean windows, slanting across polished wood, and the bright quilt folded at the foot of her bed. There was music again, too. Soft jazz from her old radio, and the muffled chords of Thomas's guitar drifting up from the porch on long evenings. The rhythms of Maria's new life deepened. Some mornings, she met Maya on the porch steps, just as dawn colored the sky. They shared the gentle silence of early risers, trading thermoses of coffee before Maya's shift at the hospital. On weekends, Thomas invited neighborhood children to help water the bean plants. He made a game out of it, and sometimes Maria laughed so hard her sides ached at their delighted squeals. A subtle but unmistakable sense of possibility settled over the house. Maria noticed it first in the kitchen, when she found herself humming as she baked peach muffins for her tenants, something she hadn't done in years. or in the ease with which she welcomed Mrs. Keller and young Mrs. Chu from next door into the swirl of voices and the scent of barbecue on the breeze. Children played tag among the irises. Mrs. Keller told a story that made everyone laugh. Maria watched it all unfold with a full, contented heart. As dusk gathered, Maya lit candles along the porch rail. Their soft glow flickered over smiling faces, faces Maria had once viewed only with caution. She realized, suddenly, that she no longer felt like just a caretaker of memories. She was part of these lives, these stories, this shared present. Later that night, as fireflies pulsed in the darkness, Maria sat beside her open window, notebook in hand. She wrote, "For so long I lived in fear, of loss, of judgment, of change. But this summer, I am learning to live in the light. My house is open. My heart is too." She put down her pen and listened to the last, fading notes of Thomas's guitar from below. Peace settled into her bones, the peace of a home not merely restored, but transformed. And as the first stars winked overhead, Maria let herself dream of all the summers yet to come.